Hi, mathletes. We are going to be writing equations of lines in slope-intercept form given a graph. For our opener, we are asked to graph y equals 3x minus 4. Now, in our previous lesson, we have talked about how to find the stealth information that's in this equation. We call this equation the slope-intercept form. And this tells us what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. So the slope is represented by m in the equation, and the y-intercept is represented by the b. So slope is the coefficient of x, or the number being multiplied in front of x, and the y-intercept is what is the constant in the equation, what's being added or subtracted. And we always write that. That's the y-intercept, that's where it crosses the y-axis, so that's right here. And it's always x is 0 if you're hitting the y-axis, and then whatever the y-intercept is goes in the y spot. So this specific equation is y equals 3x minus 4. So I like to start with the y-intercept. We start with a point, and in this case, that point is from this value right here. That's our b value. So that tells us that our y-intercept is 0, -4. And if we're plotting that, we're just going to put a dot here at -4. Now we have to look at what our slope is. So if we look at our slope here, our slope is the coefficient of x, or that number in front of x. It does not include x. And in this case, it's 3. How do I make 3 a fraction? 3 over 1 is what we can think of as our rise over run. So from that given point of -4, we are going to go up 3 units and then to the right 1 unit to get our next point. We can do that as many times as we want to get an accurate graph. I actually, when I'm doing this on graph paper, I like to do it as many times as fits in my graph. Now I went up 3 points. If I wanted to get a point to the left, I could go down. And if I'm going down, I need to go to the left. And so this last point would be right here. You don't have to do that many. And then I would use a straight edge to draw my line. In lesson 6, we're going to be working backwards. We're going to start with a graph, and we are going to then write an equation in slope-intercept form. So what information is needed in order to write an equation of a line? Well, what information we get from the equation is the information we need to get from the graph. So we need to get the slope and the y-intercept. So we're going to write the equation in the form y equals mx plus b of each line graphed below. So on your paper, you see you have several graphs that you have to write an equation for. We're going to do one together. You'll do the rest on your own. So looking at my line, I need to find the slope and the y-intercept in order to be able to use this equation. So we know that the slope corresponds to the m in the equation and the y-intercept corresponds to the b value. Let's look at our graph and see if we can identify those. So for the y-intercept, that's where it crosses the y-axis. And I would always start by labeling your x and y-axis. So our x is our horizontal axis, our y is our vertical axis. And so we can see right here, where is our given line crossing? It's going to cross right here at the origin. So the y-intercept in this case is 0, 0. Now we can look at what the slope is. And for slope, you have to count rise over run. So I can go up 1 to the left 1. If that feels too tight, you can make a bigger triangle. You could go up all the way to 5 and then to the left 5 if you want. If that's easier to see, that would be plus 5, left 5 there, or up 1, left 1 in that direction. You can also go down to points, so down 1 and to the right 1. Either way, 5 over -5 or 1 over -1, all reduce to -1. And that should make sense because when you're looking at your line, it is falling from left to right. So if I start all the way to the left here and trace my line, I'm going down. So I know that my slope is negative. And in this case, you can write that as 1 over 1, or you know that that's the same thing as 1. Let's put those into the equation. We know we have y equals something times x plus or minus something. We had to figure out those values. And we know that the slope is -1, so we can plug that in there. And our y-intercept is 0, so it's like we're adding 0 here. Oftentimes in math, we don't have the +0. Additionally, you don't always see the 1 when you're multiplying by 1 because it doesn't change the value. So you could see this as just y equals -x. Just a quick note about number 4, the grid lines did not copy. They were too faint. So you can still find the y-intercept by using the 2 ordered pairs that are given and a little thinking, use a little common sense there. Or you can view the assignment as a Google Doc. That's linked in Schoology. It'll be linked in this Ed Puzzle video. And then you can actually see the grid marks so you can read where the y-intercept is right off the graph. Finally, a quick summary. You will notice that this lesson does not feel very different from lesson 4. Lesson 4, you are given an equation and you needed to make the graph. In this lesson, you are given a graph and you need to write the equation, but everything corresponds to this slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b. This image is taken from your notes from lesson 4. You can go back to look at that. The only thing I added here in our summary is just to remind ourselves that the slope of a line is rise over run, which can be thought of as change in y over change in x, same as rate of change. And that the b value is your y-intercept of a line, and that is usually written in the form 0b, where that crosses here. And in this particular line, which we used in our summary on lesson 4, it crosses the y-axis at -1, and its slope is up 3 to the right 2. So that's a positive 3 over 2x. With my intercept right here at -1, my equation would be -1.